Sonic games have gone through multiple eras, and each one has some good games and some not so good games. So today I want to make a list of the worst game from each era. To make it simple, we'll be looking at the mainline games only, but as always, this is just my opinion, and I'm just some fat weird guy with a bunch of Sonic plushes in the background. Don't take me too seriously. So without further ado, let's go. Sonic the Hedgehog is where it all started. The story is simple. Dr. Eggman is capturing animals to power his machines, and the only one that can stop him is Sonic the Hedgehog. You go on an adventure following Eggman, defeating him a bunch of times along the way, until you finally defeat him once and for all. Now don't get me wrong, Sonic 1 isn't terrible, but compared to the other games in the classic era, it falls short. When it first came out, it was like nothing anyone had seen before. Sonic's speed was insane, until you got to the second level. Green Hill Zone, one of the most iconic levels in all of gaming, is what drew everyone in. But immediately afterwards, you get thrown into one of the slowest levels of the game. Yeah, there's one that's a little bit slower, but at least that's farther in. The level design in Sonic 1 isn't that great, at least when you look at the game as a whole. Definitely not the worst thing in the world, but it obviously pales in comparison to the rest of the games in the classic era. So even though I would say Sonic 1 is the worst game of the era, it's definitely nowhere near a bad game. Sonic Heroes is interesting. The story starts with Team Sonic getting challenged by Dr. Eggman to stop his newest evil plot. You play as multiple teams of characters on their own separate adventures that merge along the way, all culminating with a final showdown between you and Metal Overlord. The story and writing is good and fun, and the playstyles are inventive and interesting. But there are two things that hold this game back. Since this was the first Sonic game that was always going to be going to multiple different systems, Sonic Team intentionally made the graphics worse to make sure it could play on all hardware. The graphics in Sonic Heroes aren't terrible or anything, but they definitely didn't feel like an improvement to the prior game, Sonic Adventure 2. But hey, most gamers will tell you, graphics aren't everything, as long as the game plays well. Oh right, it doesn't. Sonic Heroes has the worst physics and movement in any adventure-era game. It always feels like you're on ice, sometimes you'll lose all your momentum for seemingly no reason, or even gain momentum out of nowhere and fly off the stage. Now it's not completely unplayable or anything, but it takes a bit to get used to, especially coming off of any of the other games. If it weren't for these issues, this would be a much harder choice. Sonic Heroes isn't a bad game by any means, it's just not a great one. Hopefully the rumored remake will fix these things, and Heroes will finally be the game it was always meant to be. Bet you didn't see that coming. The most ambitious Sonic story of all time starts with Sonic saving Princess Elise from Eggman for like 5 minutes. Then going on an adventure to save her. There are 2 other stories to play through with Shadow and Silver, all leading up to Sonic's death. But he's awoken by Wrong Love's first kiss, and all 3 hedgehogs go super to fight the final boss. Where do we start with this one? The story's pretty crazy and over the top. Personally, I still love it, but I can admit it has a lot of flaws. The graphics definitely leave something to be desired, with the hub worlds feeling like a tech demo, and any character other than the main cast looking like that, but the worst culprit is the gameplay itself. Odd physics, bad collision detection, and some weird movement all play the biggest role on making the game what it is. Most of us know how Sonic 06 was rushed for release, and that's why it looks so unfinished, because it is. You've no doubt heard a bunch of people, including myself, that this game had a ton of potential, but had the rug pulled out from under it. Luckily, we have stuff like Project 06, which gives us the opportunity to see what this game could have been. It's something I highly recommend checking out. Even though it's obviously the worst game in the era, I still love it even with its flaws, which is more than I can say for the next game. I hate this game more than any game in existence. Sonic Forces starts with Sonic fighting classic enemies and a new one named Infinite. He gets his blue ass handed to him and then he blacks out. Then through the exhilarating storytelling of a black screen and white text, wow, we're told that Eggman took over 99% of the world, and the rest of the characters form a resistance to fight back. The big issues with this game start before it even came out. At this point in the series, Sonic was in a bad way. The Sonic Boom spin-off games were terrible, but the marketing for them was also everywhere, leading some people to believe that that's what Sonic was gonna be from now on. And the last mainline game being Sonic Lost World, a bad attempt at a Mario game with a Sonic skin, and on top of all that, the recent stories and dialogue felt like it was taken over by Disney Jr. So a lot of fans, including myself, were overjoyed when the trailers started coming out for Sonic Forces. It had a dark, foreboding tone, the world was on fire, Sonic did the Arthur Fist. Then the game finally released, and we realized Sonic Team tricked us all. The biggest issue of this game, in my opinion, is the false promises. As for the game itself, it functions fine enough. It's just extremely boring. You play 2-second levels that have little to no gameplay in them, and I know people say this about a lot of Sonic games, but this one was truly boost to win. Then you get an underutilized customizable character that just has a big dumb-looking gun that shoots the wisps from Sonic Colors, and then classic Sonic feeling the worst he ever has, even though he literally came from Sonic Mania, one of the best 2D Sonic games ever made. Sonic 06 might not have had the functionality this game has, but it easily has more personality and is much more memorable. There really aren't any objectively bad games in the Renaissance era so far, which is great, but Sonic Superstars is one that I find subjectively awful. I've never been able to fully explain it, but the movement in this game just feels wrong. It feels almost like classic Sonic movement, but with something off about the acceleration or something that I cannot put my finger on. And unlike any of the classic Sonic games or Sonic Mania, Sonic Superstars level design feels like it's trying to stop your progress out of nowhere every 2 seconds. Then the bosses of this game are infamously either boring, last too long, or both. On the upside though, the graphics and art style of this game are gorgeous. I cannot knock it for that. Like I said, this one's very subjective, as I know a lot of people loved this game, but I had to pick something for the Renaissance era, and if this is the worst it has to offer, that is a great sign for Sonic's future. Did you agree with my list? Let me know down in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe because next time we'll be talking about the best game from each era.